Imagine for a second that you are 26 years old. You're working at this prestigious financial firm in New York City. You have a brilliant boss, a phenomenal salary, and like a clear path to the top.
Right, the absolute dream for most people.
Exactly. But you have this nagging idea about selling books on the internet. So you take your boss on a long walk through Central Park, you pitch him this concept, and he listens carefully.
And let me guess, he shoots it down.
Well, finally, he turns to you and says, "That sounds like a really good idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job."
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a serious reality check.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive.
Hi.
Because that 26-year-old was Jeff Bezos. And today, our mission is to decode the elusive blueprint of financial independence and the entrepreneurial mindset.
Right, by synthesizing insights from three absolute heavyweights who approached wealth from, completely different angles.
Exactly. We've got Jeff Bezos, the tech titan, Robert Kiyosaki, the highly contrarian real estate mogul, and Jim Rohn, who is basically the classic philosopher of wealth.
It's such a phenomenal trio to put in the same room. You have the ultimate disruptor in Bezos, and then someone totally focused on leverage and bending the rules in Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
And then Ron, who just anchors everything in old-school, unshakable discipline. But despite those different backgrounds, they all agree on one fundamental truth.
Which is?
The gap between the 1% and the 99% isn't just about having more money. It's about a fundamental rewiring of how you think about work, value, and discipline.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our goal today is to really distill the very best of these sources, to save you from years of trial and error. And to build wealth, you first have to fundamentally change your relationship with the job.
Right, that illusion of safety.
Exactly, making that leap from employee to owner, which takes us right back to Bezos in Central Park. His boss's reaction perfectly captures the middle-class trap.
A good job.
Yes. The comfort of that salary becomes the exact thing keeping you from taking the leap.
Yeah, and Bezos later talked about that specific moment. He realized you basically have three options. You can have a job, you can have a career, or you can have a calling.
And he used his regret minimization framework to make the choice. Right.
Exactly. He imagined himself at 80 years old looking back on his life. And he knew he wouldn't regret trying and failing at this internet thing. But he absolutely would regret not trying at all.
So he chose the calling.
He did. He actively walked away from absolute security.
And once he made that choice, his level of audacity was just staggering. There's this story in the sources about an investor named Dave who met Bezos back in the early 90s.
Oh, I love this story.
Right. Bezos is literally standing in a garage surrounded by extension cords, and he confidently tells this Dave guy, "I want you to invest in my company. I'm going to put a bookstore online, and someday I will be the richest man in the world. I'll do over $100 billion.
And Dave just laughed out loud.
He literally scoffed. Because, $100 billion barely registered as a conceivable valuation back then. But Bezos had already internalized it as an absolute truth.
Well, Bezos voluntarily walks away from a good paycheck, but Robert Kiyosaki, he takes this concept like a massive step further.
Oh, he really does.
He argues that security isn't just a trap, it's actively toxic. His mentor, the man he calls his rich dad, actually refused to pay him a salary when he was learning the ropes.
Wait, you refused to pay him at all?
Zero. He claimed that a paycheck is the most damaging thing you can take because the moment you accept it, you adopt the mindset of an employee. You become a slave to money instead of looking for real opportunity.
Wow. And that brings up the story of Kiyosaki getting his final bonus check from Xerox. It was for $30,000, and he's holding it, feeling this mix of excitement and unease.
Yeah, and then his coworker John walks up.
Right. And John had actually left Xerox before, failed miserably as an entrepreneur, and came crawling back. So John looks at Kiyosaki and says, "You're going to fail, and you'll come back."
And Kiyosaki's response is just perfect.
He looks right at him and says, "I will fail, but I am never coming back." He literally embraced having zero money as a character-building test.
But wait, I need to push back on this extreme view for a second.
Sure.
Because for most people listening, a paycheck is a lifeline. It's security. It pays the mortgage. Is Kiyosaki really saying security is bad? It just feels like trading a comfortable set of handcuffs for a free fall.
What's fascinating here is how Kiyosaki redefines security entirely. He draws a hard line between the internal economy and the external economy.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, a paycheck, a boss, the job market, that's the external economy. If you rely on that, you are incredibly vulnerable to things you can't control. A board of directors can just eliminate your entire foundation in an afternoon.
Right, so the entrepreneur's first job is controlling their internal economy.
Exactly. Your skill set, your resilience, your ability to spot inefficiencies, when you control that, losing a job isn't a crisis. It's just, a shift in the weather. You don't need a safety
Yeah.
net. That makes a lot of sense. But once you let go of that employee mindset, there's another trap, right? People think, well, I don't have a boss, so I just need to work harder. Like 18-hour days.
Oh, totally. The hustle culture trap.
Exactly.
Mm.
But the sources argue that effort without strategy is just a fast track to burnout. It doesn't lead to wealth.
And Jim Rohn addresses this brilliantly. He points out that 97% of people mistakenly think sheer effort equals wealth. But people don't pay for hours.
They pay for value.
Precisely. If you spend 10 hours doing something anyone can be trained to do, your time isn't worth much. But if you spend those 10 hours developing unique skills like leadership or communication,
You become indispensable.
right, you transition from replaceable to indispensable.
It's like digging a swimming pool with a spoon versus taking the time to learn how to operate an excavator,
Oh, that's a great analogy.
right? Both might take 10 hours of work, but only one creates massive value. You have to stop counting hours and focus on making yourself valuable.
And that ties directly into Bezos' framework about gifts versus choices. He says you can't be proud of your gifts, like being naturally good at math or being tall, because those were just given to you.
You can only be proud of your choices.
Exactly. The sweat and the deliberate choice to sit down and practice that math, value comes from those choices.
And he loves that old military phrase, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah, progress comes from deliberate, strategic choices, not just running around frantically. You actually see the origins of this in Bezos' childhood.
So the garage inventions.
Yeah. He wasn't just working hard, he was deploying creativity. He invented an automatic gate closer out of cement-filled tires.
I remember reading about that. And didn't he try to make a solar cooker too?
He did, out of an umbrella and tinfoil. Now, it was a faulty solar cooker. It didn't work great. But that's the essence of building value, deploying your mind to solve problems instead of just punching a clock.
Right, so creating value brings the money in. But what actually keeps it there? Because earning and keeping are two totally different games.
Yeah. Oh, entirely different.
Let's transition into the mechanics of wealth.
Yeah.
The hard and honestly sometimes controversial systems of managing money. Where do we start?
We have to start with Jim Rohn. He says wealth responds to discipline, not income. His mentor taught him to pay yourself first. You save $1 out of every 10 you earn.
Before you pay anyone else.
Right. And you have to track every single cent in a financial journal. Because if you don't track it, you can't manage it.
It's like steering a ship without a compass. You just drift.
Exactly. And he says automation is key. You can't rely on willpower because willpower vanishes when you're tired, so you automate that savings.
So Ron is the defensive strategy. But then Kiyosaki comes in and completely flips the offensive playbook.
He really does. Kiyosaki argues that the old rules, go to school, get a job, save money, get out of debt, those all became obsolete in 1971.
Right, 1971.
Yeah.
When Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard.
Exactly. Before that, money was backed by physical gold. But when that stopped, money just became fiat. It became debt that could be printed endlessly.
Which causes inflation.
Yep. So Kiyosaki says savers are losers and cash is trash because inflation is just silently eating away at your bank account. And with Moore's law, technology doubling every 18 months, even a formal education becomes obsolete almost immediately.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. We are universally taught to aggressively pay off our mortgages, cut up our credit cards, avoid debt at all costs.
Right.
But Kiyosaki is entirely flipping the script. He advocates actively getting into debt, using a 4-to-1 bank step-up to acquire real estate. And he says this allows him to pay 0 taxes.
Yeah, his strategy is wild.
I mean, he refinanced $300 million just to drop his interest rate and make more money. How does that even work?
Well, it's about the difference between consumer debt and productive debt.
Right.
He uses bank loans to buy real estate, but the tenants pay the rent, which covers the loan.
So the asset pays for its own debt.
Exactly. And the tax code highly rewards this. He compares it to his doctor friend who made $1 million in salary but took home only $400,000 after paying massive taxes.
Because earned income is taxed the highest.
Right. Whereas Kiyosaki uses debt to buy assets, generates cash flow, and uses legal depreciation to shield it from taxes.
Now, just a quick pause for you listening. We are impartially unpacking these philosophies. We are definitely not endorsing them as financial advice. Do not run out and take on massive debt just because of this.
Yeah, please don't.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, Kiyosaki's advanced maneuvers with debt only work if you have the relentless clarity that Jim Rohn talks about, right?
That is the crucial point. Without Ron's foundational tracking and automated discipline, Kiyosaki's methods would just lead to absolute ruin.
Oh, for sure. It's like putting a rocket engine on a bicycle.
Yeah,
If you aren't tracking your money, leverage will just bankrupt you faster.
exactly. Leverage just accelerates whatever direction you're already going.
Which brings up the next hurdle, time. Building these systems, rewiring your mindset, it takes years. So how do you survive the urge for instant gratification while you're building this?
Ron explains this perfectly. He says the 97% buy things for emotional relief.
Like a fancy coffee or a new gadget.
Right. You have a bad week at work, you buy a gadget to feel better, but the relief is fleeting. The 3%, though, they treat every dollar as a soldier marching toward a goal.
Wow, dollars as soldiers, I like that.
So skipping a night out to save $300 isn't about deprivation for them, it's about buying freedom. Keeping those soldiers on the battlefield.
And using those soldiers to build what Ron calls the four-legged table. Because relying on one paycheck is like standing on one leg in a storm.
It's way too risky.
You need four legs. Your job, investments, business ventures, and passive income or royalties. But to do that, you need massive self-education. Ron says formal education makes you a living, but self-education makes you a fortune.
Yeah, he advocates just reading 10 pages of a financial book every single day.
So let me ask you this, on behalf of the listener. What does this all mean for you? In a world that is literally engineered to make us click buy now, how do you actually cultivate that patience?
It all comes back to Bezos's framework of choices versus gifts.
Okay, how so?
Choosing to read 10 pages a day or choosing to cut one unnecessary expense. Those are small, really unglamorous choices. But as Ron points out, wealth isn't a singular event. It's a daily ritual.
It's the compounding of those small choices over years.
Exactly.
Wow. We have really covered a lot of ground today. We went from shifting away from the external safety of a paycheck to building an internal economy of ownership.
Trading that endless effort for actual high value.
Right, and implementing ruthless financial tracking while delaying instant gratification to build that multi-legged table of income.
It's a complete mindset shift, but there is one final thought I want to leave the listener with, something that brings Bezos and Ron perfectly together.
Let's hear it.
Bezos asks if you will choose a life of ease or a life of service and adventure, and Ron says that wealth isn't truly wealth until it is shared.
So it's not just about hoarding.
Right, so I want to pose this to you listening. If you successfully build this fortress of financial freedom, what is the ultimate purpose of your internal economy? Is it just to accumulate? Or is it to create a legacy that genuinely empowers the people around you?
That is such a powerful question to mull over. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our challenge for you is simple. Take one small action today to shift from the 97% to the 3%. We'll see you next time.